So welcome this week's Fire Analytics Collaborative meeting. I think maybe we start and just go through some of the old to-dos and action items because it's been a couple of weeks. So Madrid Connectathon, Nikolai, myself, and Adam Culbertson talked about that today. So it's going to be Sunday, May 11th at 2 to 3 p.m. So if you're going to the Connectathon, check that out. We'll post more information about that in Zulip as we develop it. Just going to go through, so talking a little bit about more recruiting for this project. So I'm going to take that on and try and advertise a little bit more opportunities for folks to get involved. Nikolai, you had a couple of items outstanding. Create GitHub topic about additional binding. Create a topic on GitHub to discuss additional binding in more detail. I actually don't know what that's about.
Yes, so I think Gina created the Jira issue for FHIR, and they still not sure. The Graham said we need a couple more months to think about this. Yes, okay. That's the solutions. We have to try to convince the Graham to think that way. So the general problem, just to summarize what the guys discussed, that so Lloyd said the two ways to describe operations. Yes, to be honest, there's so the operation and profiling intersect a little bit, but the operation doesn't support all the things that profile do support. For example, for profiles, you can already use additional bindings, but you kind of profiling your parameters in operation, but they still not sure that they want to repeat all these features of profiling in operation definition. So that's the problem. But that's quite huge problem for us. So I will try to talk with the guys in Madrid, probably in person, because what I see from discovery point of view, the server should somehow say what I don't know formats it supports, and this list should be extensible. And it's still not clear how we can say that this format's standard, but you can say that you support or not support it. I don't know. We can invent any way to do that, yes, but we want to be FHIR compliance, but it's a discussion still in progress. And I think we need Gina, maybe he has some ideas how to do this. So I don't know, I'm still not sure how to do this properly, because if you say this is just example binding, yes, it doesn't work. But maybe it works. I don't know. Maybe we can say here is a value set or the code system with our types, formats, but the implementers can extend it. I don't know, introduce another code system and build the values which include our code system, which we will providing and its own. So, or maybe, I don't know, maybe go away from terminology at that piece and I'll just list it in a simple way. I don't know. So do you guys have any idea? So the problem is quite simple, yes? So how to bring the specific value set, which we think and agree on it, format names like ND-JSON, CSV, but let the people to extend it.
So I think you can do extensible bindings in operation definition, can't you?
You can do additional binding. Yeah, we can do extensible. Yeah, that means, I don't know what it means from, so let me remember. So if the binding is extensible, that means nothing almost. It's but maybe this is our case. Yeah, so we can say it is extensible. I a little bit biased because I wrote the validator. So for me, if I see extensible binding, that means nothing at all. So, but probably in our case, maybe that really works. We may bind and say it's extensible, but how the people will discover that the extra formats supported by the server? Should they go to operation definition somehow understand that, I don't know, that there is so the implementer should bind different value set, not our value set, yes?
Yes, okay. So what you want is actually for, say, implementation X does SQL FHIR and they have their Acme format and they want to actually profile the operation, if you like, and have their own value set with Acme format plus standard formats. Okay.
Yeah, so, but that could be two situations. So they may narrow the list of formats we providing, and this is sounds probably like another requirement, because they may say I only support CSV or I only support Parquet. Yeah, they somehow should make it discoverable through the API, so that people understand that only Parquet is available. And this is a different, so they like kind of still, I know, constraining. Yeah, so that's probably bring us to the situation that like implementation should create its own value set anyway.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of trying to think of like the analog in the existing FHIR spec, you know, so we've got lots of operations that have a range of different functionality inside them. Is it all or nothing? How does it, what's the norm? Is it you just try it, maybe it doesn't work? Like, are operations arranged so that, you know, they're sort of, the scope of them is small enough that you can opt into them and through the capability statement? I'm just trying to think of how this works in the full FHIR spec.
Yeah, so this is a good idea, because what I see, for example, there's a direct similar stuff which is called format, yes, and it is hard coded in capability statement, and it is represented as a list of codes. So this is not binding, not the value set. No, it is.
Can you share your screen?
It is a list. It is bound to value set, but it is a list. So the server gives you in capability statement list of formats. Maybe we can do the same, yeah? So the server, we can say that the format in operation, but this is not in operation definition, yes? So this is a hard-coded logic into the capability statement. So we could not say the same in operation definition. So here is a field with type of code, and here is a list of codes which are possible, yeah? So the FHIR like making trick at that, so they creating like inline enumeration for capability statement and formats. They're using binding, but not for like discovery, and they are assigning additional semantic to it. So it's a list that means like one of.
And you can't really extend it, right?
We do, but officially no, you can do that. So it is an array of meme types. So you can extend it, yeah, because it has both. It has a binding, but it's still array, which should be interpreted as a one-off. But there is no such field like format in operation, or a way to say that your incoming parameter, and here is the enumeration, which is bounded to some kind of value set and should be picked up from that value set.
Do you have any sort of examples in mind of like, so we've got some ideas of what formats could be kind of standardized, if you like maybe it's like CSV, Parquet, whatever. Do you have like an example of what a proprietary format might be?
Yeah, I have non-format stuff, for example. So, and this is another question I would love to discuss today. For example, in our case, so we are not exporting, we're creating table, yeah. And my suggestion was to introduce like table as a format, or the view, database view as a format. Maybe this is a not format, I don't know, this is kind of output type or something like this. So
yeah, so I mean,
but it could be like, yeah, any binary format you can imagine, yeah, and there's a bunch of them. Avro, protobuf, I can imagine like all of them. So there's a dozen of potential binary formats.
Yeah, and I think there's also a bit of a difference between file formats and like a URL location that is kind of dynamic, which might be like, I don't know, a Postgres URL or something like that.
You mean
And
don't
yeah,
use like, yeah, but I have like, so the problem is simple. So I'm focused on that, how the client will discover what formats are supported by the server, yeah? So there should be the way for the client to query server for supported formats. We can say you have to do this through the content negotiation, I don't know, but it's still for like a synchronous operation that's not going to work very well, yeah? So, but
is it just format? And we might be maybe skipping ahead to the query and reporting thing, but is it just format or is it also protocol? You know, so if you've got like a bulk export type thing, then you can list off all these things that you can go and retrieve via HTTP as files and bring them into your analytics solution. But then you cross over into more dynamic things like database connections and Kafka and that sort of stuff, which is not just like a file format you can get over HTTP. It's actually kind of a full protocol of its own that the client has to understand and all the rest.
Have we considered any of those dynamic or protocol locations at all? I don't remember we have.
Yeah, there was discussion of, and I suggested like top level operation, like even more abstract when you, because like export means you're exporting somewhere, yes, and like file system sounds like interoperable for most of stuff. And we see that from bulk export stuff. But we may have a like more abstract operation when you say materialize these views somehow. And I don't know, I will read documentation how access them, yes. And another request from our guys that how to say that you should materialize and keep it up to date incrementally, or if it's stable, just update it through the stuff. And here, I don't think that we have to like describe exactly how it will be accessible. So this could be up to implementers, yes. But the operation could be like materialize somehow. And then if we will have query resource, then it will work like a black box. So materialize and run the query. And you don't care about the details, how it's implemented. So is it a S3 bucket or is it a table or something else in memory engine?
Well, I think if you have the query API, it changes it a bit. You know, we've sort of had requests to basically surface the SQL interface to Spark through the server somehow. And of course, Spark can just, you know, you can just connect to like a JDBC type connection and do just arbitrary SQL. And it'd be great if you can have your SQL and FHIR views exposed as, you know, tables within that connection. And so you kind of define them and they get materialized or sort of registered, if you like, and then you can just do arbitrary SQL on them. But the non-standard part of that is that your client has to know how to connect to JDBC, and it has to go through that SQL interface, and there's no kind of like, then it's a different authentication story, and you're talking a particular SQL dialect and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I can tell you our experience in 8box, yes, because we're having a SQL for a long time. So what we did, we just created like SQL on REST, a bunch of endpoints. So for example, you just posting SQL query, it could be parameterized and it runs. And we have a way, it's called 8box query. When you like post query resource, it's parameterized, and then it becoming REST API to run this query, not changing the content of the SQL, but it has a parameter, so people can call this query and passing parameters like prepared statement in SQL. And that's kind of, and the modern databases do this through the REST API as well. So, and the REST API could be a good denominator for that. So that people, yeah. And I think it's quite easy to implement such a stuff. Maybe it will be not very efficient for some like, I know, very high load stuff, but it still can provide some reasonable interface to SQL. And if we will have like query resource, you can post query resource and get result, or you can, as we did, like prepare it query. So you store it, it's parameterized, and you can call it with the parameters. But then we will have a black box, so people really can have different engines inside. They don't have to know how it's stored. And I think this is a good part, but the risk to over specify.
Yeah, I'm kind of starting to come around to this idea, but I think the complication is, yeah, what is that? How do we specify that SQL subset or that SQL dialect or whatever, and effectively like, and does it need to be mapped into particular implementations, or is it just some subset that works across nearly every implementation?
Yeah, there is one
subset.
Yeah, there's
you're talking about
ANSI SQL subset, which like most of database is trying to support. And with the flat tables, it's quite good, I think. There are even engines which can translate ANSI SQL to dialects. But we can introduce as well some like additional fields, so you can provide like different queries in different dialects, because usually functions have a different names and stuff like this. So ANSI SQL doesn't specify everything. Some basic stuff will work everywhere, but we can like, and I think like DBT have this problem. They usually like template at very small part, but I think like having multiple dialects in the query. For example, if you're loading some, I don't know, some first data bank, they just provide you like 3 dialects, yeah? MySQL, Oracle, and other stuff, so it's quite trivial to translate it to Postgres, and then like you're running all these queries. So we will never will be able to get rid of all these differences, yes, but we can give a space to provide these dialects, but the directs like enumerable, not so many of them.
Yeah, you're talking about the query resource idea. Yeah, I generally think the same way, and I've been threatening to put some pen to paper about this for some time, but I'm like, we did look, I think, 2 years ago about an ANSI SQL subset and trying to define that. I'm not totally confident. Well,
yeah, but we
let's just
did
say I'm not totally confident
in a
that
different context. We tried to like find how it works with the nested data structures, yes,
Yeah.
and this is unspecified part, like how to unroll stuff or like explode.
Right.
So that was a lot of difference. If we're talking about like basic flat tables, basic functions like age and length and like uppercase and joins. So I think like 90% of ANSI SQL is supported by all engines. The main question is the functions. Yeah, so the functions probably should be somehow templated, but
I think it can be incremental. Like it's how I'm thinking about it. Like the query resources sort of has a very incremental kind of structure where it almost like, here is what we think is in the ANSI SQL subset, because you're thinking about the writers. How are they going to know what is in the subset as they're writing? And if it's a very trivial query, that's all you have to do. Like, and then you're done. And then have, like you said, an enumerable list potentially of translations, some that are explicit. One kind of interesting wrinkle here is something like Trinio, I think it is called, where there's a mechanism, there's a system for this problem in particular, which takes, I think, some input SQL and then has worked out how to convert it into dialect. So I mean, these are the kinds of things to think about, but overall, in my mind, a really simple query resource that has these essentially slots so that you can have this both explicit and sort of incremental aspect should be pretty sufficient, right? Like to cover a lot of these cases. I think we just have to think about it like maybe a little bit more. I think my hesitation is, yeah, just going through that list of what is in the subset. Like, how do you know what's in the subset as you're an author? But I think it's a solvable problem.
we can ask,
it's going to be heuristic a little bit. But.
Yeah, but we can do this similar stuff like we did with the shareable views. Yeah, so example, if the query can be described with ANSI SQL, so it could be like ANSI compatible query. But it's usually quite trivial if you have like query in ANSI or in Postgres or Oracle to rewrite it to specific dialect. And if we will have the space for the people in one query to provide like 3 or 4 dialects, so even if they're the fifth dialect, so that people can do it manually or using LLM or stuff like this. So
I think yeah, I agree with that, particularly with the tools that exist now. I think Trinio, I think we should explore the Trinio option here, but yeah,
we can learn from Trinio because they did this translation, and we can see they definitely identified the subset which works.
Okay.
Another project which is called I forget P-SQL, or let me search. They introduced the language which is compiled to SQL, and they do support multiple dialects. Okay.
Well, I think we should just look into the translators. I think there's there's like a baseline, there's the explicit translations that people might do, right? And then there's, I think, one more category of, support for some of these types of systems that can do it in a more automated fashion. That's how I'm picturing it in my head. I should write that down, ship it around. Okay, so we've been chatting about this for a while, but so any action item on create topic for additional binding? I'm hearing no. I'm hearing it's like there's a ticket in FHIR about this, and that's where it should live.
Yeah, but the
Or
more
is there anything we need to do about it?
Yeah. But the more I'm thinking that probably, I don't know. So for us, it's important that the client can discover what formats we do support. Yeah. How we can do this, I don't know. Maybe we can even create custom operation, give me all the formats you support.
That's possible. I honestly like split it up, right? Just
if it,
the concern, the concern is different.
If it doesn't work, like if FHIR framework doesn't work, so we can create like specific operation or create an extension with a list of codes with the
well, we kind of have this problem that we can't describe all the nuance of all the detail of what we support in SQL and FHIR in general. Like if we look at the whole FHIR path thing, we can't describe, all the different functions we might support over the top of like this minimal subset, all that sort of stuff in like a capability statement. It's just crazy. Yeah, which is, why I was also thinking a bit more about the idea Graham originally had about, an operation, can you execute this thing? Do you have the capability to execute this particular view definition? Just yes or no, and like initial errors relating to the parsing or like support for the features required to run this thing is like an alternate way of sort of getting at that. It's obviously not as good as being able to advertise all the features, but how far can we go in terms of describing all the nuance of the capabilities?
And Josh, are you talking about like feature queries? Have you heard about this? So the Gina and Graham, like here we go. We talked with them. They started this stuff, which is a like kind of generic operation because they see limitation of capability statement, and that's not everything can be like described with capability statement. So they start working on a prototype. They call it feature query. I think there's this like some draft IG, and this is a way when you can like request features, and we probably can be like one of the users, so we can say that the formats of the export you can get through the feature query, and we will create a specific feature query and like and the server should respond with a set of codes, and we don't have to like, I don't know how to say it in English, like putting globus on turtle or turtle. Yeah, so
I mean that sounds
that's
like
interesting.
Yeah, that sounds like a more promising direction, a more
that's strange.
That's something to check out.
Yeah, that Gina didn't like come up with this idea because he and Graham was driving this feature query FHIR. Let me see. Yeah, feature query.
Yeah, I think the idea of implementers sort of having to write profiles of operations or add basic profile to sort of add formats and all that sort of stuff seems quite heavy. But I think we also need to have a discussion about how much we sort of bite off in the first sort of version of this, and like maybe there's a simple a chunk of this API that's a good starting point with some basic functionality before we bite off some of the trickier things. But like I do appreciate that some of these decisions we want to get right in the first instance so that we don't have to reverse them later on.
Yeah, I sent the link to the chat. So this feature query framework, and it doesn't sound too complicated, but it gives a lot of freedom, so we don't have to think. So we can say that just define set of features. I haven't like motivation, John. So I'm thinking a lot about MCP server. That's why I want all the stuff will be discoverable. Yes, because so the agent can do that for us in the near future. That's why I'm really like serious about discoverability, all of this stuff.
All right. Well,
And it's like, it is a simple problem, yes? So the server should give the array of formats.
Does it
And
matter in the context of an MCP server though? Because
it
my
is,
my MCP server can, well, yeah, but my MCP server can basically say, you know, invoke this tool, you need to write it in Spark SQL, and it already knows how to write Spark SQL, it knows how to write all the dialects pretty much. And
but
then I'll
imagine,
just give you
yeah,
back the result as plain text, basically.
yeah, maybe, but I still think if we think like generic MCP for SQL on Fire, so it can connect to the engine, get the list of formats, and make decision. Yes, so they build the plan. If it want to, like, if it has another MCP for Spark, okay, or for Parquet or something else. So, or it can run queries on in S3 buckets, so he can pick that stuff. And I still will like, okay, maybe it's optional, but I will challenge like FHIR. Because for me, it's quite trivial, yes? So we want operation, we want to provide set of formats, and they should be discoverable. So what the problem? Why it is too much?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've been spending a lot of time talking about this, so I think we should probably move on because we've got some other things. All right, so we're going to table this for now, keep it on the list. We'll just go through a couple of things. Nikolai, implement reference client. Have you done any more work on that?
Yeah, I can show you the reference implementation. So I'm not yet, so it includes a client. So let me quickly show you. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
So let's go here. And for the guys who are looking at the API, I'm not working a lot on a spec part like a markdown, but I implemented all this stuff. So for now it's living in the code. And if you want to look, so here's how it may look. So you go to metadata, like capability statement, and that's how you can discover that the view definition are supported, that I can write or I can only read view definitions. Here's a set of operation, export and evaluate and run. Free operation, and all of them work now. So if I go to view definitions and I have specific view definition and I go to the run operation, I can pick the format, let's say CSV, and run it. So, and I'm getting this. So this is real-time operation on a view which already in a server. So this is for more static servers, but yeah, so then we can go and see this evaluate operation. I already showed that, yes. So you're sending the view definition, you're picking the format, not Parquet is not yet supported. So CSV or JSON or ND-JSON. I implemented the export operation, which is simulating the asynchronous operation. So you can say, for now it's by reference. So this is only views which are already on the server. And I think next we can discuss how to provide the set. You can pick the format, you run, so you're getting this URL, so the user interface just jumped to this URL. So that's what we're getting here. So this is initial parameters. This is a URL of the status to poll the data, and here's the start time. And now it simulates when you press the refresh and do one step, like importing one view. So just, so you're pressing, and for example, you see that one view already was exported. And here is a location to take this view, and here is a number of records in this view when you're pressing another type. So it's exported another view, and the status is changed. It's still in progress, and now it's completed. So now you can go and take by these URLs all the views, and they really working here. So if I will make it in user interface. So if I will open it, so here is a like exported CSV file. So
Great.
it wasn't too hard to implement, but yes, these interfaces are generic. So they reading operation definition and showing you like input parameters and output parameters. So I'm still hope that finally we will generate documentation from operation definition. So we don't have to write it manually, all these parameters. Yeah, and for example, and John, I know you did this homework. So how we will provide to export operation set of views, which we want to run. So for now, I only implemented like view reference. That means that this is a local reference for the server. And this is, I think, this is like minimal requirement, because if it's static server, which doesn't allow to create on fly, view definition, that's the only available option, yes, for the guys. And the next the question. Shall we provide library, bundle, I don't know, URL so the server can read? And I'm a little bit scared there's too many options.
Yeah.
I would love to reduce them. Maybe say, guys, you have to load all the view definitions and then only use references. I don't know. So this is one option, yeah. But maybe that's too much. Maybe we can provide like one more way, maybe like 3, but if we will provide like 5, so that's going to be too much, I think. So we should limit ourselves with the like number of ways to provide. But this version definitely should be for static servers, which doesn't support dynamic view definitions. So what other versions let's discuss, like absolute URLs, bodies, like sending the bundle of view definitions. I don't know.
That
Could
is,
you, for example, oh, sorry, Arjun.
No, I was going to say this is based on your feedback, John, in the Zulip chat, right? The 2.2 bulk export with a bundle parameter, a reference, is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah.
Okay.
The problem how to provide the list of view definitions to the engine, and I suggest to like limit number of options. Maybe 3 is the top. And let's try to pick which, and it should be driven by scenarios, yes, so that.
Yeah, and I think we want it to be dead simple. Like even the minimal library thing is, I don't know, it's a little bit contrived to me. It's not, I don't love it. I really like just having a list of views. And I think we also want to be able to do like inline somehow. I don't know if you can just have references to contained views or something. But I think the use case for having a list in a resource is so that you can kind of distribute these things, so that you can say, here's a set of views that we have like packaged up with this implementation guide or something, and these live together, and this combination of them is good for a particular use case or something. I can imagine that probably is required, but I don't really love any of the options I've seen yet for doing it, unfortunately. But I think a great starting point is to just do exactly what you've done, Nikolai, and just have a list. I think reference is pretty flexible, right? Because we can refer to things that are on the server, but we can also refer to things by URL, and we can also refer to contained things, right? So through reference, I think we can do inline, we can do references to canonicals, and we can also do references to actual instances of view definition, right?
Yeah, I agree. So that everything can be reduced to references with a slightly different semantic for the list, yes, and the bundle. And this is still the question.
So this is awesome.
Yeah, how it's gonna be used. So for example, because you may say that you somehow should like load views into your engine, like split this problem in 2 pieces, yes, and then you can refer these views. So and then the like the most straightforward way to load views into the engine, just use a FHIR CRUD or the FHIR transaction operation. And I don't know how hard it is to implement for ETL pipelines, but I think they can simulate this CRUD API, maybe like write only or stuff like this. But that's one option, yeah. Or we can say that, yeah, you can give us like absolute reference, yes, and then the engine will read it from like, you can put the view definition on S3 bucket, give us the reference, and if engine can load these views outside, then it works. What's nice about like run it through the CRUD, that it will potentially have a chance to validate the views, yes, before you run them. So the engine can validate views when you're creating them and then you like running them. But I'm not sure that it is convenient, but at least it splits into atomic operations. So the load view, validate, and then you can run it view, or you can use it in export. So otherwise we're getting like all possible these compositions and stuff. Maybe for convenience we can reference the list, but this list should be on the server. So then you can just, if you always exporting the same views, so just not to list all of them once and once again.
Oh, you mean
I think
list via parameter?
Yeah. So we can use like list reference, and the list will refer the other views or the bundle reference. I'm still like confused with such a big number of options to do that.
Containers, the number of containers.
The problem with list is that it's not a canonical resource.
Yeah, it is not a canonical. Yeah.
The data type, right?
Or like library. Yeah. So the guys pointed to us that it is library. But that's probably maybe for the future, yes, because we're thinking that like eventually people will author set of views, and then you want to like not taking views one by one, but you just want all of these views, yes.
Yeah, I mean, we should think about it in the context of that kind of, analytic object. I mean, we don't have to solve it now, I think, but yeah, it really does feel like there should be a container for the view definitions this should run against, and that should be a canonical resource it's an individual artifact.
Or it could be packaged. So there's so many options. I'm still reading.
I'm doing a lot of CRMI, so I have a lot to say about package, but
maybe kind of. Yeah, but in CRMI you can create this. I suggested guys to not call it package but assembly, and assembly set of canonical resources, and then so you can.
You're to stop you right there. Like I'm literally trying to figure out a name for is not package, right?
Yeah.
Because there's all those different types. Well, there's two main types. They're very different. They're both called package. Artifact is used a million times, and a higher abstraction that sits over those things. So I made a list earlier this week of different name possibilities. So if you have different name possibilities, you mentioned it earlier today. I was thinking module, but because module is not used in the text of FHIR, it's used in the like specification as a area of the specification. But you were talking about module as with your modular FHIR idea, so that might not.
Yeah, but the module is like it is very abstract term. I think for the CRMI, the best solution to go with the assembly, because they have an assemble operation, yes, and they have like package. But the package term from CRMI is intersect with the FHIR packages, and they two different things. And so, but assembly, it looks like very like clean for me for CRMI. Maybe I know we discussed with Brian about this. So I think like renaming CRMI packages to assemblies, and they really assemblies. Yes, so you resolving all the dependencies and like putting everything into one package. So it is assembly.
Okay, well, I'm taking suggestions. Yeah. So I wanted to mention that. But back to this specific issue.
I would say what the problem we are trying to solve. So the idea how we're going to provide the list of view definitions, yes, in some container. Right. Is it real problem we're trying to solve? So what if you like force people to list views all the time? So is it problem or not?
I don't think it is a problem initially. Right. And I think it's a good starting point. But what I would say is I don't think we should have the requirement to write view definitions in to be able to export. So I imagine I have a server that can export. I want to be able to supply my own view definitions and export from it without necessarily being able to register those view definitions with it, because it might not give me permission to write those view definitions in. So I think I do need a way to supply a set of view definitions and have them run it and give me an export without necessarily having access to the right part of the CRUD API or whatever.
Meaning like a non-persistent, right?
But this could be solved with the absolute references, yes? So you can just provide a set of absolute references, and we treat them at that moment as the real URLs, yeah? So like FHIR do. In FHIR, you may have a like local reference, which is like patient/1, yeah? Or something like this, or you may have a like absolute reference, like another FHIR server /patient/1. So, and if we say that you may support like local references, or if server can do this, it can support external references, but then the the question arises about access. is this view definition a public or not public? So, and we're getting like, this is a kind of rabbit hole. so then we will provide like some access key, like token as a parameter or something like this. So it's getting like worse.
I think a simpler option in the first instance is I can provide all my view definitions in line to the request and I can reference them and it just goes away and does it. So like if I'm doing this as a post parameters, why can't I just have a set of view definitions as contained resources
I
and
agree.
then references to number one, #1, #2, #3?
You don't even, so I think we can say that you either provide us local references or you provided the whole view definitions. And we can, in the parameter, we can say it's a multiple view definition and the resource inside. And you can send us like 10 view definition in this input parameter.
But
and then
couldn't that be a
sorry, just provide us the body. So don't like all the view definition inside. And that's the same stuff we're having with the run and evaluate operation. So evaluate accepting the whole view definition, and the run essentially running on a view definition which is already on server.
Right.
And this
so
is potentially enough for most of stuff.
Well, maybe I missed it, but like if the actual code of view definition is posted, right? Could the format of that be bundle library?
No, you can just put it so the parameter resource by themselves is a container. So you may create the parameter resource with the first parameter, first view definition, second parameter, second view definition, and third parameter. We can call it just view. So, and again, it's exactly like here for the evaluate. So you see the resource parameter is coming. You can call it view and make it like multiple. And then you can, with the parameter resource, you can send us multiple views, which you aren't expecting to export.
Yeah, I'm not saying that this is like the ultimate solution to everything, but it's a good base.
This base.
And escape hatch for and then if and when we sort of figure out good containers to distribute these things, you can use that, but you always got a way to execute any arbitrary set of view definitions, even in the absence of that. Maybe you get the package yourself and you just send those view definitions or a subset of those yourself on the client. And in the future, we have other ways of sort of just referring to a package or referring to some sort of known container or whatever. And
this seems to solve the
and I have another point that people can write scripts which will use internally this like parameter resource with the view definition bundles, but they can get this view definition from any source. And this can be easily done on top of this API. And that's what I really like. So
on the client side, the client can do that
outside of the engine. So because this is kind of basic engine operations. If engine is static, you don't have a choice. You're just picking which are here. Or you're sending the bodies of view definitions. How you get these bodies, the small script can decide. Is it like whole package views, like specific library, the list, resource, the bundle? So it's up to you. So, and it's like 5-minute coding with the LLM to do that.
So I see we are at time limit and I have to go. But I mean, if you guys want to continue, you can. Is there anything urgent that we need to chat about that the four of us are on? I'm just looking through the list. In terms of next week, one thing I did is I did take a pass. Bashir reminded me anyway of the Parquet on FHIR. John, you might want to take a look at that if you have a chance. Some of the notes that I put in there, like it's been months and months, so I don't remember what they mean. So, when you free up a little bit, I think we should probably have a more deep dive session so that we can, maybe even one-on-one or you, me, Bashir, folks who are interested, we'll have like a scheduled session. We all kind of refresh our memories on that. So I wanted to mention that. Yeah, anything else?
Yeah, I think once we can incorporate that work that you and I did, Arjun. We can move it to its new home. We can maybe say, here's a time we'll talk about it again.
Okay.
But
Yeah, I think that's
once we've actually finished that, yeah.
And
Yeah,
for
we
my side,
have-
I will implement this what we discussed because I really like it. So I think this is
okay.
this is a good start. Yeah, and sorry guys, I have a hard break as well. So
Yeah. All right.
Awesome.
bye.
All right. See you
All
guys.
right.
Bye.
See you.
John, are you going to be at HL7?
Unfortunately, not this year, but I will be cheering you on from the other side of the world.
From afar.
All
Don
right.
started traveling. He's tired.
Nice. All right. See you guys.
All right. See you.
Okay, see ya.
Bye.